Hi everybody, and welcome to the fourth video for thegreenmalt.com. I'm Chris, and this is the Aultmore 12-year-old. The Aultmore is a Speyside whiskey. It's kind of from the northeastern area of the sort of Highlands region. It's a transliteration of a Gaelic term that means the big burn, big stream, probably referring to the Auchendarran burn, the water source that they used. It's owned by Dewars, and it has traditionally been used as the constituent, or one of the primary constituent components in Dewar's blended whiskey. And up until about 2014, this was not available as an official bottling, at least not in its current form. I think there was a 2004 12-year-old at 40% or something, slightly different, and not anything, I don't think, that ever made it to Ontario anyway. I don't know about the rest of the world. But up until a few years ago, we wouldn't have seen Aultmore, nor would we have seen a lot of the other single malts under the Dewar's umbrella that we now see every day. So it's one nice thing about being a whiskey aficionado in Canada and Ontario these days. Price aside, we get a little bit more variety than maybe in the past. This is a bottle that was recommended to me by a friend when she visited Scotland and was introduced to it there, and I'm glad that she did recommend it because it's one that I've enjoyed greatly. It's not colored and not chill filtered. Let's see if I can get a half decent shot of this and this not too great camera, but maybe a little bit. No, not really. It's a very pale, very pale straw kind of color, and I was hoping to get a little bit of mist going in the glass to see as well, but not so much. I think it might be a little too warm in here. I think I've mentioned not chill filtered in the other videos, but I don't know if I've talked about what that means exactly. And just very briefly, if you're chill filtering a whiskey, you're cooling down the distillate to try to get some of the fatty acids and esters in there to form, coagulate a little bit to a point where they become large enough to filter out, just so that when it's bottled and sold, people don't get that happening in the glass. So it's purely an aesthetic process, because I guess people don't like to see cloudiness in their beverage, but when you take away some of those fatty acids and those esters, those are what contain the chemical compounds that we taste and smell. And so by taking it out, you risk taking away some of the flavors in the whiskey, and I don't think anybody wants that. Now, it's also said that if you do chill, or if you don't have chill filtration in your whiskey, you should be bottling at 46% or higher, because below that it ceases to become stable and you get a lot more of that separation of fatty acids and coagulation in your glass. So this, fortunately, is 46%, which is also nice to see from a flavor perspective. And yeah, now I should say that because I haven't mentioned it before, what I'm tasting, what I'm smelling, is as a result of those chemical compounds, like I said, those fatty acids, those esters, and how my own experiences play into my interpretation of those is going to differ from anybody else's, obviously. I'm associating them with foods and other experiences that contain those same chemical compounds, and while we might agree on what a banana tastes or smells like, or what vanilla tastes or smells like, perhaps some of the less commonly shared foods and flavors we might disagree on. We might have different interpretations of those chemical compounds based on our own experiences, and that's fine. But these are just mine. What I will say is that this is one of the most fruit-forward whiskeys I think I've ever tasted, as far as tropical fruits, fresh fruits go. Not so much the dried, red, pitted, sherried fruits that you get in those sherry matured whiskeys, but as far as a bourbon aged whiskey goes, it's pretty interesting. I think if I had to sum it up, it's kind of like a Hawaiian vacation in a glass to me, because it's so much citrus fruit, so much pineapple, sort of banana and mango type flavors on the nose. I mean, there's a sweetness to it, a honeyed sweetness, and vanilla. Seems like I say that all the time, but definitely in this one. But it's so fruit dominated. It's almost unique in my experience, but not quite unique. The palate's a little bit different than you would expect based on the nose, because the sweetness hits you first. That vanilla and caramel flavors, they lead the way, but only briefly, and it's a very quick progression through the arrival into the development into the finish with this whiskey. Most of the flavor and notes do come through the development, even though it's not particularly long. The sweetness of the vanilla and the caramel does give way pretty quickly to those fruit notes. A lot of fresh citrus, but also something a little bit floral and a little bit savory, sort of grassy. Yeah. It's very well balanced, because I could very easily see a lot of whiskeys being sickeningly sweet when you have this level of sweetness that hits you right off the bat, but it doesn't stick around. And that's why it's such a nice drinking whiskey. And then, as I said, sweet, fruity, grassy, savory, and into the finish, kind of like a dried, zesty citrus, a little bit of a sour citrus, and kind of a spicy alcoholic kick. A little bit peppery off of the bourbon oak barrel influence, but it's just such a neat little progression to this one. As coincidence would have it, I was planning to do this for the fourth video, going back a couple weeks, and I've been sort of working on it over that time. But a few days ago I attended a tasting with a friend of mine, and not knowing what the whiskeys were going to be when we arrived, this turned out to be the first of the 6 whiskeys we were going to taste that evening. So it was kind of interesting to get a different perspective, to see whether my interpretation of it held up at all when talking to somebody else about this whiskey. And we tasted all 6, and by the end of it, when we were comparing notes, we agreed on the basic flavor profiles, which was great, but we also agreed, of the 6, if we had to choose one that you could say I could easily conceive myself drinking this all night long, this was the one. Unquestionably, nowhere close to anybody else. And it's not because it was so head and shoulders above the rest in terms of its quality or its flavors. The other ones were all great in their own way, and they all had their own distinct characteristics and things that were working for them. But there's nothing about this that suggests to me that I would get sick of it after 1 dram or 2 or even 3 or 4. Not that I'm advocating drinking 4 or more drams of whiskey in a given evening, but you can just keep at it because it's so well balanced, and because it does have those distinct and separate progressions through the taste experience. It's just a really nice whiskey, all in all. I think it might benefit from a little bit more aging, and I've tasted the 18, though it struck me as kind of this kicked up a notch, maybe a little bit more refined. But I don't know how I'd feel about losing the little alcoholic bite on the finish. I kind of enjoyed that in a whiskey in general, and I enjoy it in this. So I don't know if I'd want to lose it. But who knows? I'd like to get my hands on a bottle of the 18 or even the 21 or 25-year-old at some point, just to get a point of comparison going. But all in all, it's quite a good whiskey, and if I had to rate it, I'd give it something in the neighborhood of probably an 82 out of 100. I think that's the same mark I gave to the Oban 14 in the last video, and quite frankly, though they differ in their characteristics and their flavor profiles, I view them as similar quality experiences for me. I think the big differentiating characteristic is that this is about $30 cheaper a bottle than the Oban 14, and yes, it is a little bit younger, but don't know if it's the Oban that is worth the extra 30 if you're worried about the budget aspect of things. And I know a lot of people just rate these things on their quality and don't worry about the price, but it's a consideration. It really is. But again, all in all, 82 out of 100. You know, at $80 a bottle, at 46% for something that has this quality, I quite enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody, especially somebody who's new to whiskey as a bourbon aged whiskey that doesn't necessarily share a lot of the common characteristics of many solely bourbon aged whiskeys. It's just something interesting to try. So cheers everyone, and thank you for joining me again, and I hope you'll join me for number 5, because I expect to be reviewing a whiskey that'll be a very interesting point of comparison for the Aultmore, and yeah, I hope to see you then. Cheers.